Hi, Andy XL back with another NFXL podcast. And this is another 2026 NFL draft related piece with that just being just over a week and a half away. And here I'm going to concentrate on the tight end expectancies, which follows on from similar pieces regarding the running backs and wide receivers. So I'll take a look at the leading tight end candidates ahead of the 2026 draft, what sort of stat lines we might expect from them, and which teams may offer the best landing spots for them to make an impact in their rookie seasons. So, what have tight ends done this decade that have been drafted this decade? Well, 42 tight ends have been taken in the first 125 picks of drafts this decade. Five of those have gone in round one. Oregon's Kenyon Sadiq is the clear tight end one in this class and also looks likely to be the only one taken in the opening round of the 2026 draft. So, what did the opening round picks achieve as rookies, which may set the bar for Sadiq ahead of his rookie season? Well, Kyle Pitts in 2021 was the fourth overall pick for Atlanta and the first tight end taken, obviously. And he's had 1,026 yards and just a single touchdown. Colston Loveland last year was the 10th overall pick and the first tight end taken by Cleveland. He recorded 759 yards and six touchdowns. Brock Bowers the previous year went at 13, again being the first tight end off the board, but for Vegas. And he's put on the best stats of anybody in a round one this decade. He had 1,194 yards and five touchdowns in a truly outstanding rookie season. Tyler Warren was another early pick last year. He went at 14. Personally, I thought he should have gone at one, and he was the second tight end taken instead, behind Loveland by Indianapolis. Had 817 yards and four touchdowns if you extrapolate it across a full 17-game season, which is what I've done for all of these guys. Dalton Kincaid in 2023 was the 15th overall pick. Again, the first tight end taken by Buffalo, 715 yards and two touchdowns. So from those five, we've got a range of between 715 and 1,194 yards. That's, like I say, averaged out for a full 17-game schedule with between one and six touchdowns. So not a huge touchdown production, but plenty of yardage. Overall, that's an average of 902 yards and 3.6 touchdowns. I would note that Loveland and Kincaid had Cole Kmet and Dawson Knox to share um, tight end targets with in their first years, whereas the other three pretty much had a clear run at being the dominant tight end on their teams. So if Sadiq lands on a team that offers that opportunity to be the lone guy, as it were, then the average for those three was 1,012 yards and 3.3 touchdowns. Teams that seem likely to offer Sadiq the best opportunity targets wise as Miami who have picks 11 and 30 and Carolina who have pick 19. But teams who may be looking to get the next elite tight end in the NFL on their roster as a succession plan include Kansas City at 9 and 29, Cincinnati at 10, Baltimore at 14, Minnesota with pick 18, or New England who have the 31st pick. I suspect Sadiq will go between pick 9 and 19 to Kansas City, Cincinnati, Miami, Baltimore, Minnesota, or Carolina, who are the six teams who will surely consider doing so. And in that area of round one, Tampa Bay at 15 could be getting an upgrade on K. Dotton, adding a seventh team that could see Sadiq on the 26 roster. As I said earlier, Carolina and Miami look like the teams that will give him the best chance of a 1,000-yard rookie season, though. So what about in round two? Another dozen have been taken in round two this decade. Eli Stowers and possibly Max Clare could go in round two this year. Now, Stowers is a hybrid tight end wide receiver type out of Vanderbilt. So more like Kyle Pitts, Isaiah Likely, even a Harold Fanning and a Randall Gadsden. And he's a pure receiver type. Indeed, some people are actually viewing him ahead of the draft as a wide receiver rather than a tight end. But I've called him a tight end for the purpose of this because that's what he played in college. Um, so the type of like Pitts, Likely, Fanning, Gadsden is what type you'll be getting with Stowers. Plenty of receiving talent, but don't ask him to do much blocking. Clare is a stronger all-round candidate, but does not offer the receiving talent upside that Stowers potentially does. The 12 round two guys from this decade are Sam Laporta, who had 889 yards and 10 touchdowns for Detroit, going as the 34th overall pick. Michael Meyer, who was the 35th overall pick, had a more modest 369 yards and 2 touchdowns. Luke Musgrave, who went at 42 in his year, put up 544 yards and 2 touchdowns. Mason Taylor last year again was another 42nd overall pick, 483 yards and a touchdown. Cole Kmet, who went at 43, had 258 yards and 2 touchdowns. Terrence Ferguson, who went at 46, had 280 yards and 4 touchdowns. Elijah Arroyo for Seattle went at pick 50, 234 yards and a single touchdown. Ben Sinnott went at pick 53 for Washington. Just the 28 yards and 1 touchdown, as he had a really quiet rookie year, and has been pretty quiet since, to be honest. Trey McBride was the 55th overall pick, but was the first tight end taken that year by Arizona. But surprisingly, in his rookie year, only had 282 yards and a touchdown. Pat Fryermouth, going back to 2021, was the 55th overall pick, 528 yards and an impressive 7 touchdowns as a rookie. Luke Shoemaker was a 58th overall pick, 65 yards and a touchdown. And Brenton Strange was the 61st overall pick, and in a bumper 2023 draft was the 6th tight end taken. He just had 42 yards and a touchdown. We can see from that the numbers drop off as we go into those taken later in round 2. Laporta at pick 34 pretty much put up round 1 type numbers, but 3 of the last 5 failed to even reach 100 yards for their rookie campaigns. A tight end going in the top half of round 2 would appear to have a shot at recording in excess of 500 yards and multiple touchdowns. Stowers is the most likely to go earlier in round 2. Again, similar names are mentioned. KC, Cincinnati, Miami, but the Jets also, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, all sit between picks 40 and 46. Minnesota at 49 or Carolina at 51 may also look at Stowers if he falls to them and they haven't taken one in round 1. If Claire were to make it into the back end of round 2, Denver at 62 and New England at 63 might be the teams to take him there. But history from this decade tells us not to expect much from tight ends that go at the end of round 2. So, round 3, 11 more went between picks 65 and 100, and Claire plus Sam Roosh and Michael Trigg are the 3 in round 3 positions on my big board. Just to run you down some names of the people, the 11, they were Harold Fannin, Jelani Woods, Tucker Kraft, Greg Dulcich, Hunter Long, Tip Raymond, Tommy Tremble, Devin Asiasi, Darnell Washington, Josiah DeGuara, and Trey McKitty. So, again, as you get down to the lower half of that list, not a lot of production. The top 4 in that list, Harold Fanning, 770 yards and 6 touchdowns. Jelani Woods, 353 yards and 3 touchdowns, been injury blighted since. Tucker Kraft, 355 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Greg Dulcich, 690 yards and 3 touchdowns. So again, the earlier part of this round 3 are the ones that definitely do best. But what we do tend to see from third round tight ends is they're more one dimensional, either decent receivers or larger users blocking tight ends. And Sam Roush may fall into the latter category this year, so I would not expect anything significant receiving wise from him. Fannin and Dulcich were pure receiver types, both Claire and Trigg are out of similar moulds, so may be capable of going over 500 yards and scoring 3 or more touchdowns as rookies if they land on a team that gives them a chance of getting up towards 100 targets for the season. Once again, Carolina and Miami may offer the best chance of getting the volume of targets if they have not taken Sadiq or Stowers in the first 2 rounds, even in the third round, I should say. Sadiq, Claire or Stowers, that should be. The Panthers have picks 83 in round 3, but the Dolphins currently own 4 third-round picks at 75, 87, 90 and 94, so they could well look for a tight end in round 3. Outside the top 100, 14 more went between 101 and 125. Now, none of these reached 500 yards. I'm just scanning. Oh, one of them did. Albert Boonham, easy for me to say, in 2020, 527 yards and 4 touchdowns. But other than that, they're all in generally the 200, 300 yard range. And just to run down the names, they were Dalton Keene, Jeremy Ruckert, Cameron Latu, Jatavian Sanders, Adam Troutman, Cade Otton, who had 415 yards and 2 touchdowns. Theo Johnson, 469 yards and 2 touchdowns. Daniel Bellinger, 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. Harrison Bryant, Eric All, the aforementioned Aqua Boonham, Gunnar Helm, 379 yards and 2 touchdowns in a promising year last year. AJ Barner and Cade Stover. So, as I said, generally 250 to 400 yards and 2 or 3 touchdowns is what you've got from a tight end that will go early in round 4 of this draft. In this class, Justin Joly, Jake Andrews, and possibly Oscar Delp could go in that area of the 2026 draft. Um, of those three, Jolie seems to have the best shot as a receiving tight end on the right team. Now, four more have gone in the mid rounds of drafts this decade and turned out to be pretty good tight ends. Terence Ferguson, who had 281 yards and 3 touchdowns as a rookie. Isaiah Likely, 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. Chiga Konkwu, 450 yards and 3 touchdowns. And most notably last year, Aronde Gadsden, 753 yards and 3 touchdowns. So there are only four this decade, three from the same draft in 2022, who made any impact as a receiver in the first year in the NFL. Now, I have to say, I thought Godston should have gone much earlier last year, having averaged over 70 receiving yards a game in 2022 and 2024 at Syracuse. Likely produced similar numbers in his final year at Coastal Carolina, admittedly for sort of second, third tier college teams, but still put up the production. So maybe a smaller school guy with those numbers from this draft might be one to look out for in the middle rounds, which gives me another opportunity to plug Tanner Koziol out of Houston, who had 56 yards a game last season following a 70-yard a game season at Ball State. Um, I've spoken about the 6'7" Koziol before as a size mismatch for teams trying to cover him, and all the trends indicate that he might be worth taking a punt on in the middle rounds of this draft. So that's the tight end piece. Next up, I'm going to come up with some potential mid-round steals in this draft, and Koziol might feature again in that. And then I'm going to have a look at some people who might slide come draft time, my draft sliders, as it were. So look for those pieces upcoming. See you soon.